Welcome back to SFGMC TV. My name's Mitch Galley, and I am the Associate Artistic Director for the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. Today we're going to be going over Lesson 2 of 6 of the Outside Voices curriculum. Today's lesson is called The Craft of Storytelling. Look at today's learning objective. Students will be able to identify the key components of a successful story, including the protagonist, a light bulb moment or the climax, obstacles and goals, and also transformation and realizations. And then you're gonna formulate the first draft of your story. Woohoo! So exciting! All right, let's look at the introduction. Please read this introduction aloud. Here we go. Sweet, nice job. We're now gonna go into the do now for this week's lesson, and it is going to be an article that you're going to read called The 6 Rules of Great Storytelling as Told by Pixar. Because when we think of organizations and companies that know how to tell a good story, Pixar is definitely at the top of their game. Go ahead and read that, and then we're gonna come back together to have a few discussion questions. Click that link in the curriculum. Go! Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the article. As Crush from Finding Nemo would say, righteous! Okay, so we're now gonna look at these discussion questions for the article you just read. The first one, and if you have a parent or a sibling or even a cat that maybe wants to listen to you talk out loud, go ahead and talk about this. Otherwise, you can either write it down on a piece of paper or type it on your computer. But let's talk about first, what makes Pixar shorts and movies so compelling? Why are these stories something that really pull at our heartstrings? Go ahead and answer that now. Now, let's look at number 2. How do these 6 rules that you just read about play out in other stories, songs, or works of performance art that you absolutely love? Really think about this and take a few minutes. Go ahead and talk about that or write about that now. Go. All right. Let's jump into the lesson for the week. So you're now going to take the If You Really Knew Me worksheet that you completed last week for homework, even though it's technically just work because everyone's at home right now. So all the work we do is homework. We're gonna use that for this week's lesson. And you're going to be using the new worksheet in lesson 2 called Crafting Your Story. As we work through this worksheet, please refer back to the If You Really Knew Me worksheet for some ideas that you can start pulling from. Now, one of the things with this section, because we're going to be choosing the story that's eventually going to be turned into a piece of performance art, a lot of students often think, well, my life isn't exciting. I don't have any stories that are important. Well, I have something to say to you. That is false. We all have stories that are really important, no matter whether they're huge, amazing stories or really small stories about who we are. Our stories matter, and that's what this curriculum is going to show you. So if you're really struggling with finding or feeling like a story is good enough to turn into a performance art piece, know that it can be as small of a story that maybe you just really love your sense of fashion. And you can write a whole song about the importance of expressing yourself through the clothes that you wear. So I got a little off track, but go ahead and have this conversation with someone close by if you're really getting stuck on a story that you want to use. We're going to use this Crafting Your Story worksheet and step through it with each of these questions. The first question is looking at the protagonist. And in this case, since it's your story, you are the protagonist. I want you to write down 3 things that you think are really unique about yourself. There are some sentenced prompts and starters that we suggest using if you're having a hard time coming up with any right below this section in the green box. Go ahead and take a few minutes to write down 3 things that are unique about you. Go ahead. See? I knew that you had it in you. You could come up with hopefully at least 3 things that make you unique. If you still don't have 3 things written down yet, pause this video and go ahead and reach out to somebody that's in your house, or if no one's around right now, hop on the phone, hop online, talk to a friend or someone that knows you really well that you can have a conversation about what makes you unique. I am positive that there is at least 3 things that make you unique. There's probably hundreds once you start really digging into it. If you've got at least 3, we can move on to the light bulb moment or event. So this is where you're going to take your worksheet from last week, if you really knew me, and you're going to start looking through the things that you wrote down. And we're going to try and find experiences or events that you've lived through that were a light bulb moment, an aha moment. Like I said earlier in this video, in this lesson, you don't need it to be something that was earth-shattering and huge that completely turned you upside down. It can be small. We are all going to go through different experiences in our lives, but all the experiences we go through, we learn something more about ourselves, and we also learn about experiences that maybe we'll encounter later in life. So go ahead and start thinking through an experience where you had an aha moment, and you're going to put that down in number 2. Once again, if you're having a hard time coming up with something in this section, go ahead and reach out to a sibling or a parent, or once again, hop on the internet or on a phone call and have a conversation with someone who knows you well that can maybe help you talk through what this idea might be. Enjoy number 2. We'll come back in a second once you've got that written down. Here we go. You are halfway through this worksheet. Okay, so this next section is going to take the light bulb moment that you just wrote about, and you're going to start looking at the obstacles or the goals that were set in motion and activated, catalyzed by what happened during this aha moment that you just wrote about. We want to really know, as the person that's hearing your story, what were the emotions that you went through? What exactly was the experience like once you started setting either a goal that you had or maybe obstacles that you started to run into? For this section, you're going to put at least 3 obstacles, goals, or ongoing events that are related to the light bulb moment that you just shared. If you have a hard time with this one, once again, you can talk to somebody that's either in your house, or if no one's home right now, you can reach out to someone virtually on the phone or online and start having a conversation about what were these next steps with the obstacles and goals. All right, go for it. Look at you go. We are cruising today. This is awesome. So we're now into the 4th and final part of your story, the transformation or the realization. So in this part, we've already looked at this light bulb moment that then catalyzed you to keep moving forward and either hitting obstacles, or maybe you started to set goals along the way. And eventually there was this transformation moment where you achieved your goal or where you overcame an obstacle. So we want to know, what is this moment of transformation in your story? And how did you get through the obstacles, or how did you achieve the goals that you were setting and getting to where you are today? What is this new person that was created out of the experience that you went through? Whew! You have been working hard today, and I love it! Great job so far, and thank you again for joining us for lesson 2 of Outside Voices. We're so happy to have you here with us. So let's take a minute before we move on to recap everything we've done so far, because we have been busy today. The first thing we did was we looked at the 6 rules of telling a compelling story, and thank you again, Pixar, for that. The next thing we did was we looked at our own experiences and we started to identify the components of our story that make it compelling. The first thing we had to do was identify the protagonist, which in this case was easy, it's you. The second thing we did was identify that light bulb moment that you went through in this experience, which then led to the moment of having to identify obstacles that you had to encounter or potentially goals that you had set forth in order to achieve something. Finally, you identified right now the ways that you were either transformed or realizations that you had because of this experience that you went through. So now's the time that we take all those little components and we synthesize them into one story. This story is going to be as long as you possibly can write it with as much detail as you can. On page 3 of the Crafting Your Story worksheet, you're going to see a bunch of lines. Now you can obviously write it there, but if you run out of room, we don't want this to slow you down. We encourage you to use a computer to write this or other pieces of paper and really get as much detail as you can, because I promise you, as we get into the future lessons, the more detail and the more information you can have now, the easier it will be moving forward. So go ahead and take some time to write out this whole story. It might take a little while, that is okay. The more time you put in now, as I said, the easier it will be later. Have fun reliving this fun experience, or maybe it wasn't a so fun experience, but this life-changing experience that you went through. Ready and go. Way to go! You did it! That was probably one of the hardest parts of this curriculum, and it is complete. You now have the first draft of your narrative. Nice job. You should be really proud of yourself. We have one last thing we have to do in preparation for next week's lesson, and that is choose the type of medium that you are going to be using from here forward for your performance art piece. You have 4 options to choose from. If you go to the last page of lesson 2 in your curriculum, you're going to see 4 options listed with hyperlinks to examples of each of those mediums. The mediums include a monologue, a spoken word or piece of slam poetry, an original song or rap, or taking an existing song or rap and just rewriting the lyrics so it's not what the artist originally said, but rather your words in your story. Go ahead for the rest of this week and dig through these links, and then you can choose for lesson 3, yes, we're on lesson 3 next week, you can choose what you're going to end up using as your performance art piece. Can't wait to see what you decide. We'll see you next week. Have a great one.